a guy to sort of split the difference here, an accountant by training, but a good Wall Street watcher as well, Dan Geltrude. So, Dan, if you don't mind, I want to tap the accountant part of your fine brain, and that is tax cuts or spending. Which win out as stimulative to the economy?
I think the proof is in the pudding, Neil, because what we saw of the impact of the Trump tax cuts proved it. We saw a booming economy and record low unemployment. So I don't really see how you argue the success of that. As far as the reversal of the Trump tax cuts, the New York Times had an article recently that talked about 65% of Americans did receive a tax cut. So if the Biden plan is going to reverse that, that is automatically going to increase taxes across the board, at least for those people. So it's not accurate so far to say that only people making above $400,000 are going to feel a tax crunch. Now, it could be that they're going to drop the Trump tax cuts and replace it with something else, but we don't know exactly what that looks like right now, Neil.
You know, Jenna, doing a little bit of fact checking on both the vice president and Kamala Harris. He was right to say that the average American family did receive this $2,000 break. She was right to say it went disproportionately to richer folks, just in sheer numbers, forget about the percentages. But I'm wondering, in a Biden administration, if it were to come to pass and these taxes go up in an environment the Biden-Harris ticket has said is awful, is it a good idea to raise taxes in an environment like that? If it is as bad as that ticket is saying it is, the last thing you want to do is raise taxes on anyone, including Dan. What do you think?
Well, to Dan's point, as he mentioned that 65% of Americans received a tax cut, I'm curious to know what his thoughts are on the other 35% of Americans, the teachers, the nurses, the firefighters, the frontline workers who have kept a lot of Americans alive over the past 8 months, who have not received any sort of tax credit. And so when you talk about a thriving economy, yeah, the economy is thriving for the rich. 100 American billionaires made another $30 billion in the past 8 months. And if you feel like that is supporting the base and helping Americans grow, then you and I have very different interpretations of what a thriving economy is.
Well, Emily, we can go pre-pandemic because that's the big, elephant in the room. That changed everything. But these tax cuts, regulation cuts, all the rest had brought us down to record low unemployment figures, not only nationally, but among every key demographic, from Latinos to African Americans to women, et cetera. So the Trump administration comes back to say, I could do that again. And we're seeing a lot of that again with these tax cuts still in place. We've now erased half of the 22 billion jobs lost. So the trend is our friend. Which argument do you think is winning out? Now, I know the polls. I know the president doesn't like them. I know in battleground states, that's his argument as well. But again, there, too, it's been problematic. So if it's so real, why aren't more voters responding that way?
Well, I think because the issue of the economy is something that Trump would love to have be the center of discussion of the campaign, but that's not what the focus is. The focus is the coronavirus pandemic. It's President Trump going to the hospital. It's the Supreme Court vacancy and nomination. All of these other factors have really eclipsed the one bright spot of the Trump presidency that he would love to have the focus be on. And I think the challenge also for the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is that, she said in that debate, in that clip you played, that, that they would eliminate the entire Trump tax cut. If you look on paper, their actual plan is a lot more complicated. But every time that she and Joe Biden, who has also said this, that they are going to just eliminate the tax cut, that gives fuel to Republicans to bring up all of the benefits that brought to everybody else. So that's a misstep on their part as the Trump administration tries to make this all back around the economy.
So, Jenna, on that end, before I go back to Dan, but that argument and to sort of rescind the tax cuts and all of that, that is, the Biden plan does call for raising corporate taxes from 21 to 28%, not all the way back up to 35%, but that would affect average folks, right? I mean, because they might be caught up in that. If companies see their bottom line infringed, they could go, right?
Sure, but if we're talking about the amount of Americans, the 30 million Americans who are now unemployed, the 1 in 5 businesses that have had to shut their doors in the past 8 months, I think everybody's looking at how we can stabilize our footing. I think
but raising taxes on them is not going to help their footing. They're going to lose their footing.
For corporations in the 1%, yeah, I'm totally fine for them to take a hit. So
no,
I
this
can
is
make
all
sure my nurses and
they
my
all
kids
pay the same tax rate. They all pay the same tax rate. So you raise taxes on them, they're screwed, right?
Not necessarily. If you're talking about 7%, I mean, Biden and Harris are proposing that no one's going to pay more than 7% on childcare. I'll take that deal. I have 2 young kids. I mean, you see a tremendous amount of proposals coming out of that campaign that are suggesting that they're focusing on working families and how they can support and stabilize an economy that has never been so insecure before, and is very much looking at a tax code that allowed a president to pay $750 to a country, and that country also pays $75 million back to them. The tax code isn't working. So every single time we put taxes into the middle of a conversation in a political
you deflected
conversation,
a little there. I understand you're coming. You deflected a little bit here. I just find if the argument, and Dan, this is super quick. My producers are furious at me, but they always are. They're young, and they could be my kids, so I don't care. But anyway, Dan, if they are saying right now, this Democratic ticket, that we're going to hell in a handbasket and the economy just sucks wind, you would assume raising taxes on anyone, corporations included, would be a bad idea. So is it your thinking that companies could absorb a 7% hike in taxes from 21 to 28% and not impact their workers?
There's no way, Neil. There's no way that these corporations are going to absorb that hit. That hit is going to be passed on to employees and the consumer, because they are not going to destabilize their bottom lines. And on top of it, Neil, wealth is mobile. Like we see wealth moving between the states, we are also going to see corporations moving for greener pastures, which we have in the past. And to have literally the highest corporate income tax rate in the industrial world is not going to help this economy. The way to help the economy is to get people back to work. Raising taxes is not the way to do that.
All right, we'll see. There are 2 competing thoughts, 2 competing